Welcome to the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. This is Melisa Liberman, and today we're on episode 188. We're going to be talking about thinking of yourself as a managing partner of your business and how that can be a game changer for your consulting business results. I'm really excited to share today's episode with you because it's a really fun way to think about yourself and your business, and also an extremely effective way to think about yourself and your business, and is going to help you as you implement this make more money and land more fulfilling and exciting and challenging type of engagements. So I think this will be a really effective episode for you to start refreshing and rejuvenating your business, especially if you're listening to this in the real time, we are in Q4 and starting to think about what it looks like to finish the year strong. All right. So that's what we're here today. Thought I'd share a quick personal update. This past weekend, my youngest son, who's 9, is obsessed with tarantulas. He's been obsessed with tarantulas for probably a year and a half or 2 years. One of his science teachers made them do some type of a project. I think maybe it was in first grade or something. That now that I'm looking back, they picked an animal, or in this case, an arachnid, I guess, and wrote a report on it. I think it was the end of first grade. And he fell in love with tarantulas, strangely, and has been obsessed ever since. We have a membership to this place called the Butterfly Pavilion in Denver, where we can go visit this tarantula, which we try to do every few months. Its name is Rosie. It turns out there's 70 of them at this Butterfly Pavilion because I think they each kind of last 10 minutes before they swap them out. He was pretty devastated to find out there was more than one Rosie, especially 70 of them. But anyway, long story, we ended up there. It turns out we went to Mexico a few years ago, or a year ago or so, and we were thinking, where do we find a tarantula? And everyone we asked kind of looked at us strangely and said, I've never seen a tarantula in my life. You imagine, at least I do, that these tarantulas live in more of a tropical environment or kind of arid environment. And so anyway, it turns out that one of the largest populations of tarantulas is in southern Colorado. And every year in sort of September, October, they do this migration, which I think is more of a mating season than a migration, but it's called a migration. And anyway, there's just all these tarantulas. So we went down there this past weekend to where these tarantulas are. It's a couple of hours from our house. And he got to go. I said tarantula hunting, but he corrected me that it's tarantula finding. And we just spent a whole day looking for these tarantulas, actually a whole evening, because they come out at night. And he was picking them up. Don't tell my parents. Maybe they're listening to this. I don't want my mom to know. His grandmother, she'll freak out that he was holding them, but we did let him hold them. Anyway, I just thought that would be a fun story to share, that there are tarantulas in southern Colorado if you also love tarantulas. I don't know anyone else who loves tarantulas, but my son seems to make up for the lack of anyone else loving tarantulas. He loves them so much. But that was like a very unique adventure. Anyway, let's get back to the point of today's episode, which is thinking of yourself as a managing partner and how this could make a game-changing difference in your business. And I'm really excited to share this with you. I've got a couple of examples of how this looks in real life, the inspiration of this episode. But another inspiration of this episode is when I work with independent consultants, I send them a contract. And on that contract, they fill out their name and address and some things like that at the top. And one of the questions is their title. And so sometimes people will put in their title, Miss, Mr., Mrs., Doctor, whatever, their personal title. Sometimes they'll put in business owner or CEO. And occasionally they've put in managing partner. And I always am really fascinated about what drives someone to call themselves one thing over another. And what difference might that make, even though it's incredibly subtle, right? What difference might that make in the way they run their business? And so today I want to explore that with you and share with you this concept of thinking of yourself as a managing partner of your business. Let's talk about the agenda. So we'll talk about, what does it mean to be a managing partner of your business? Why does this matter? What are the attributes of you being a managing partner? And then I'll share with you a case study of what it might look like to think about yourself as a managing partner and how that makes a difference. And then we'll wrap up the episode with tips to put it in action. The companion resource to today's episode is the Consultant's Business Health Check. So I've created an online assessment where you can go on, answer a handful of questions, and then it will give you an assessment of your business and point out area where those scores are lower, where the scores are higher, and help you to prioritize to continuously improve and build upon and grow your consulting business. You can find it at icassessment.com. The letters IC for independent consultant, assessment.com. And even if you've already taken this before, I would recommend going back and taking it a few times a year so that you can see where the trends are going. Sometimes scores will go up, sometimes scores will go down, and it's always really good to have those kind of baselines so that you can use them to set your priorities. I think also having this as a baseline as you're thinking about today's episode and how you might be approaching these different aspects of your business that are covered in that health check from the lens of being a managing partner. Okay, so let's dive into step one of our agenda today. What is a managing partner? I went out online, obviously, and started researching different definitions of what a managing partner is. And I've got a practical experience here in a moment to share with you. But just thinking about the definition of being a managing partner, HubSpot has a great one that I thought really encapsulates what we're talking about here today. And that is a managing partner of a consulting firm is primarily responsible for the daily operations and strategic direction of the business. That's you. You're doing your daily operations and also running your business. You're managing those day-to-day activities. You're implementing long-term strategies to ensure your company or your firm's success. And you're also involved significantly in client interaction, financial management, leadership, and guiding the firm toward achieving its business goals while also managing internal and external relationships effectively. I think that encapsulates perfectly what you do as an independent consultant and a managing partner in your business of one. Now let's talk about what might this look like in as from an example perspective. I was thinking back to the managing partners that I've worked with and for over the course of my career, both when I was in corporate and also as an independent consultant. And two of them really stand out to me. Those two of the partners that I worked, managing partners that I worked with at Accenture early on in my career. One was responsible for the oil and gas practice in the Northeast US, and the other one was responsible for PeopleSoft public sector in the US. So I'm dating myself a little bit when PeopleSoft was still its own company before it was bought by Oracle. But those two managing partners really made a huge difference in my career and also provide a really, I think, powerful example of what a managing partner is and does, one that's effective. And so when I was thinking about those two individuals, what really bubbled up and what I noticed, and of course I was, at the lowest rung, very low rung, not the lowest, but a very low rung at Accenture before I left. So I wasn't interacting with them on a daily basis, but the nature of our projects were that I was interacting with them. They weren't so high up that I didn't even know their name. I knew them. I worked with them and got to see how they interacted with the clients as well. And so as I think back to those experiences with them, what I noticed is that they were focused on 5 key areas. Number one, strategy, like the vision of that particular practice within Accenture, the growth of that particular practice within Accenture, and the direction, and to see where, sometimes based on market conditions, they would shift emphasis from one area to another. The other thing that I saw them focusing on so heavily was client relationships, building and managing and really deepening those client relationships. For example, with the partner that focused on public sector, I would see him on a quarterly basis, usually meeting with the city auditor, an elected official, and building that relationship so that not only we were implementing PeopleSoft at the time because of Y2K, again, to date myself, but also I could see him building relationships and looking at the bigger picture and trying to foresee what the next set of things would be for that particular client. Not only obviously for self-serving reasons in the sense of selling more business, but also to be seen as a trusted advisor for that particular client, in this case, the city auditor, that elected official at the city of Boston. The other thing that I saw them focusing on so much was business development, landing new business. Sometimes we would be pulled in to provide some kind of subject matter expertise. I was never pulled into those sales calls, but my manager on the project was, and we would help create slides and decks for those types of meetings and that kind of thing. And always noticing that, and even those partners asking us questions because we were on the ground about, what opportunities that they might not be aware of because they're not there on a day-to-day basis. And then the financials, they were responsible for the financials, hitting the numbers. And when you weren't billing the right amount, but you would definitely be hearing from maybe not that partner right away, although ultimately, but certainly the finance people on that project who were working for that partner and keeping track of those financials so closely. And the other thing they were so focused on was staffing, not just putting people on the projects, but really knowing who were the A players on those engagements so they could build relationships with them and then ultimately take them from project to project after an engagement was finished, making sure that they could leverage people they trusted and not kind of go through the Accenture system without having influence over it. We'll put it that way. So I share this example just to paint a picture of what a managing partner might be doing in practice in real life. And when you start thinking about yourself as a managing partner, even if you're an independent consultant, as a managing partner of one, and thinking about some of these aspects and how they might be helpful for you to bring to bear in the way that you're managing your business and your clients and yourself as an employee in your business. Now let's bridge over into, why does this matter? Why would this make a difference to you thinking of yourself as a managing partner as opposed to a solo consultant or independent consultant, or even as a business owner? So often we talk about business owner mindset on this podcast, but even a subset of that is thinking of yourself as a managing partner and the way that that might show up in shifting the way that you run your business. So, why would this concept matter? How could it make a difference for you? Or how could it be a game changer, as the title suggests? Number one, it helps you to set priorities of how you're using your time. Think about it. If you wake up in the morning and you get ready for the day and you go into your office, if you sit there thinking of yourself as a managing partner, here I am today with my managing partner hat on, versus I better look at my calendar and respond to my clients. Of course, you need to look at your calendar and respond to your clients. I'm not suggesting you should ignore that. What I am suggesting is, if you sit in your desk thinking of yourself as the managing partner, it creates a very different lens from which you start thinking about the way you're running your business and the way you're using your time and the way that you are portraying yourself and the way that you're interacting with other people. So, to be more granular with this, you thinking about yourself as a managing partner can be a guiding way of setting priorities. If you're sitting there as a managing partner, I was doing this earlier today as I was thinking about this episode. If I'm sitting there thinking about how those two managing partners that I shared with you a moment ago, how they might be approaching their day. Now, granted, they have an assistants and staff and all of that kind of thing. But at the same time, if I just strip all of that away and wonder what might they have been thinking when they're running their practice versus the way I'm thinking about running my practice, it really helps to create a stark difference in how I might set my priorities for the day. For me, for example, right now I have an assistant. I give her, even though I know she won't do it the same way that I would do it, or maybe as quote unquote good as I would do it, I still give those things off to her because I know that my time is so much more leveraged when I'm able to support my clients directly, when I'm able to create new tools or even this podcast for you, versus getting really bogged down into the details. And so for you, even if you don't have an assistant, think about, if you sat down at your desk today and thought of yourself as a managing partner, how might that influence the way that you're setting your priorities? The other way it makes such a big difference is it creates what I like, a term I've I don't remember where I heard it, but it really resonates with me, is something called a lifting self concept. So rather than the self concept you might have of yourself right now, the way you think of yourself, for some of us, we think of ourselves as a contractor or a staff augmentation or someone who's a fractional, one of those terms. When you think of yourself as a managing partner, imagine how that lifts up the way that you see yourself, elevates the way that you interact with those potential clients and your existing clients, and how you give yourself permission to demonstrate your and interact with them in an advisory type way. It also gives you the permission to innovate and create efficiencies in your business where you might not have prioritized creating tools or methodologies because you're so busy in the day to day. When you think of yourself as a managing partner, how might you be putting tools and processes in place that make your team more efficient when you are the team, of course? Ultimately, you thinking of yourself as a managing partner in your business will help you to make more money, will help you to feel more confident, and will ultimately set you up to be more sought after or to become sought after for what you do. I think it's such an incredible, powerful tool, and also one that's very creative for you to be able to take a moment and think of yourself differently and kind of open up the door to thinking of yourself and your business and your clients from a very different perspective. So let's talk about the attributes of being a managing partner. If you're watching this on YouTube, I've got a slide here that has 8 attributes of a managing partner. If you are listening to this on the podcast, you can look at the show notes and we'll put this image in there for you. So you can just click on the link to the show notes and we'll have the image there. But here are the 8 attributes you want to be thinking about as you think about yourself running your business from the vantage point of being a managing partner. The first is your leadership and vision of your organization. Again, this can apply whether you're a solo consultant or a boutique consultancy or want to build yourself into more of a mid-sized firm. The first attribute of you thinking of yourself as a managing partner and then operating your business from that lens is your ability to lead and set a vision. It's the ability for you to lead, inspire yourself and any team you might have to have a clear vision for your company or for your firm and where you want it to go, and to be able to make decisions that move yourself and your business in that direction. That's attribute number 1 of being a managing partner. Attribute number 2 is your strategic thinking. We've talked about it on this podcast before, business owner thinking time. Take it down even more granularly to managing partner thinking time. Setting aside that time on a regular basis, whether it's daily or weekly, I wouldn't do it much less than that, so that you can be thinking about, even if it's for 10 minutes, what are those long-term goals? How is your business on track to hit those long-term goals? What market dynamics do you want to recognize and start taking into account in your strategies? How do you want to position your firm in an even more effective way so that you land more ideal business? Like really sitting down and thinking about what is an area of your business that you want to evaluate or to evolve and optimize, and then spending that strategic managing partner thinking time really tackling that. The third attribute of being a managing partner of your own business is that business acumen, that you have a clear grasp of your financials and the way that you're running your business, what your profit margins are, what your revenue growth strategies are, and then you've got a command over what is going on in your business. So many of us run off our business off of what we imagine is happening or what we kind of think is happening versus what we know is happening. We talked about that last week in last week's episode of getting clear about your math and knowing your math at all times. That's number 3. Number 4 is that client relationship management. It's the client relationship management that's so important as an aspect of being a managing partner. A lot of times, if we think of ourselves as a business owner, as a CEO, sometimes we're kind of removed from those clients or customers. When we think of ourselves as a managing partner, it's got the word managing in it for a reason. It means that you are building and maintaining relationships as the core of what you do. You understand their needs. You are focused on client satisfaction. You're focused on client retention and continuing to provide value to that client, even if they're not currently engaging you. This is one of the key aspects and differentiators of what I see to make a managing partner successful, or not even be able to get to that level of managing partner if you're not able to do this type of work of building those long-term trusted relationships with existing clients and new clients. So that's the fourth attribute of a managing partner. The fifth attribute of a managing partner is business development. You do not become a managing partner if you don't sell business. It just doesn't happen. You get stuck at like a director level or even a manager level where you're executing on projects, but when you don't sell work, you don't get promoted in a traditional consulting firm. And so for you, that's part of what you signed up for. You signed up to sell work. And so becoming proficient in expanding your company's, your firm's business portfolio, in becoming proficient in networking and generating leads and moving those leads through the process to land business, whether it takes 3 weeks or 3 months or 3 years, even. That's your responsibility as a managing partner, and thinking about your business processes and your sales processes from that lens of a managing partner can be so valuable for you to start shifting and optimizing the way that you go to market and the way that you generate leads and evolve those leads into contracts. The next attribute of a managing partner is you deepening and clarifying and portraying and demonstrating your firm's differentiators. It's you having those processes and systems to stand out in the marketplace. It's because you're driving value and reputation and efficiencies by being visible, by creating unique approaches to the problems you solve, by building methodologies and tools that make you stand out and unique in the marketplace. That's your responsibility as a managing partner, to stand out from your competition. The next attribute of being a managing partner is driving those financial results. So we've talked about you being up to speed and always up to date on your financial results and driving new business. At the end of the day, this one I separate out very specifically because you're responsible not only for developing the business, but delivering on those financial results. You're responsible for landing new business and also driving the business to create revenue and cash flow for yourself and profitability. You are responsible as a managing partner for landing and executing profitable engagements so you hit your company's targets. By profitable, I mean, if you're a business of one, it means that you're making the most of your capacity. It means that you are leveraging your capacity, which is what you're selling in a lot of ways. You're selling results ultimately, but to create those results, you have to allocate capacity to those clients. It's you maximizing that capacity for yourself and your business of one. That might mean that you leverage subcontractors, either client facing or not. It might mean that you increase your rates and your pricing to drive those financial results and profitability. It might mean that you shift your go to market strategy or your target client to generate higher paying clients and ultimately more revenue and more profit. It might mean that you hire people or engage people to take on work that is less profitable so that you can protect your capacity for that more profitable type work and engagement and client relationship management. A managing partner of a consulting firm is one that is finding those efficiencies and making sure that their resources are billable at the most profitable way. They're not letting a manager for, if we think back to a corporate consulting type of a system, that managing partner is not down in the weeds of an Excel spreadsheet. They've leveraged other resources to do that. Or even now for you, you could leverage ChatGPT, do a lot of that work that you might have been doing kind of manually before. And then finally, the eighth attribute of a managing partner is that reputation and brand management. It's your responsibility to cultivate your reputation as a leader, as one of the leaders in your industry for what you do. so that you ultimately create a dynamic where you're more known for and sought after for the type of consulting that you offer. And therefore, you create inbound leads. You create clients who want to work with you, who want to make sure you have time allocated and space allocated to support them, versus you feeling like you're always pushing a boulder up the hill trying to land those new clients. Those are the 8 attributes of you as a managing partner of your business. So let's talk about what this might look like from a case study perspective. I'll share with you an example of a consultant who put this idea into practice in his business recently and what the result was. Just from this maybe not easy, but a simple approach to thinking and shifting the way he was thinking about his business. So I'll tell you, this was a consultant who had been doing more staff augmentation type roles in the technology space, staff augmentation, everything ranging from setting roadmaps and strategic directions for his clients, all the way down to even sometimes rolling up his sleeves and doing some coding and development still, and pretty much everything in between. Much more of a fractional type of a consultant. And that's how he thought of himself, a fractional CTO. And so as we started working together in a process to where he was wanting to grow his business, to have more predictable revenue, to increase the amount of revenue and profitability, and to feel that he was more in control of his business results and not relying so much on word of mouth and other recruiters and that kind of thing that were bringing him business. We put this idea in place, or this concept in place, of him thinking of himself as a managing partner. And what might that mean when he thought of himself instead of more of a fractional or staff augmentation, and shifted to thinking of himself as a managing partner? And from that lens, he started realizing that he wanted to shift what he was offering to his clients, that he wanted to shift and focus less on execution and really make execution a very thin amount, kind of rare, let's say, service that he offered, and focus so much more on strategy and road mapping and supporting his clients in more of an advisory type way. And so from that lens, then he realized he needed to fine tune the target ideal client that he was approaching and building relationships with. And from there, he realized he needed to shift and optimize his lead generation strategies so that he was much more visible from a thought leadership perspective, doing more speaking and generating clients through relationships that might take a little bit longer from a sales cycle perspective, sometimes taking longer, sometimes not, but creating those relationships so that he had that strong foundation build up for himself. And so what it did when he was thinking about himself as a managing partner of his business rather than the fractional consultant delivering the business, is that it helped him to really fine tune his business strategy. It fine tune those offerings and his go to market strategy and his lead gen strategy and the ideal clients he was targeting and the messaging he was using. Didn't have to scrap his whole business and start over. What he did, though, is use this concept to fine tune and optimize each one of those steps of his business. And as a result, start to create more inbound leads of clients that saw what he was able to do because he was so much more visible and wanted to have strategic type conversations with him, and therefore turn some of those into clients that were looking for things that were more on the strategy side, road mapping and 3-year strategic maps and advisory type retainers that he was able to sell. All of this pointed back to that one conversation he and I had that kind of launched all of this, which was, what might shift in your business if you started thinking of yourself as a managing partner? And so I give you that example so that hopefully it inspires you to start thinking about yourself as a managing partner, and what might that influence then in the way that you go to market and the way you're running your business and the way that you're leading and evolving your business in those 8 attributes that I shared with you earlier. So now, as you've got the 8 attributes, you understand why this might matter, how it might make a difference, and have that specific case study example. Let's wrap up today's episode with the 3 ways you can put this episode into action. The first is to go take that health assessment. It is at icassessment.com, the two letters IC for independent consultant, the independent consultant's business health assessment. Take it from the lens of thinking of yourself as the managing partner. I think even if you took it a month ago, I would go take it again from the vantage point of being a managing partner of your business, and how might your answers change from what you had previously entered, even if nothing else about your business has changed. Thinking about it from that lens will be really fascinating to see what your results might be and how they might be slightly different. And then the second step that I recommend for you to put today's episode into action is for you to set aside managing partner thinking time. Set aside time on a weekly basis, an hour or 30 minutes or even 15 minutes, for you to put yourself in the headspace of being the managing partner. Like I was describing to you earlier, think about yourself sitting down, come into your office, sit down, think of yourself as the managing partner very intentionally, and then ask yourself some really powerful business owner questions, some powerful managing partner type business owner questions. Ask yourself, where are you already thinking as a managing partner in your business? We'll put these questions in the show notes so you can go grab them. Where are you already thinking as a and operating as a managing partner in your business? It's always important to start off and give yourself the credit for what is already going well so you can build upon that. Then ask yourself, what are the 1 to 2 gaps? If I think of my business as a managing partner and those 8 attributes I was just describing to you on this episode, you can go look at the visual we'll put in the show notes. What might be the 1 to 2 gaps that you identify as a managing partner that when you think about your business would make the biggest difference if you went to go tackle those? And then finally ask yourself and answer, what are 1 to 2 areas that you want to address, that you want to test out when you look at those gaps? When you look at those gaps, what are 1 to 2 areas or strategies or tactics that you may want to implement in your business to test out from that managing partner lens to start seeing your results shift as a result of that? And what would the results look like ideally? So those are some guiding questions to get you started thinking about yourself as a managing partner and leveraging that time that you've set aside on a weekly basis to think of yourself as a managing partner. And then finally, consider getting help to put this in place in your business. This is one of the things I do as a coach, is help you to think of yourself differently, of your business differently, of your clients differently, so that you can break through any plateau you've been experiencing, or even launch your business in a more foundationally strong way so that you can create the results that you want financially, and the types of clients that you ideally are working with, and the engagements that you're landing. You can find more information and apply for coaching for consultants at consultmelisa.com. And I will see you again next week. Take care. Thanks for joining me this week on the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. If you liked today's episode, I have 3 quick next steps for you. First, click subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to make sure you don't miss future episodes. Next, leave me a review in your podcast app so other independent consultants can find and benefit too. And finally, to put the ideas from today's episode into action, head over to melisaliberman.com for the show notes and more resources to help you grow your consulting practice from your first few projects into a full-fledged business. See you next week.